lessons that we can derive, although it's not, we still need to wait for in-depth analysis. There have been some discussions on what we should have done, how we should have done better. And perhaps with regard to this conference, we really missed a lot of potential or possibilities that could have helped us a lot through IT if we had been prepared better. So I'd like to share some of my reflections. And of course, I don't represent the government at all at this point. This is my personal experience. Um, the stage of MERS epidemic in Korea can be divided into roughly 4 stages. First is the beginning, where a lot of people really regret that something should have been done better at this point, although we don't seem to see anything here. But actually what really happened is at this point. Then because of some delays and missing responses, we started to see the second wave, and then the third wave, much bigger wave that really threatened the whole nation, with resulting humongous economic impact. And then fortunately after quite a while, the epidemic, the outbreak has been under control, and then finally it has ended after a couple of months. So with very brief epidemiological distribution, there were a little bit more males, similar to Saudi Arabian experience, and somewhat similar distribution around 40 to 60 of age. And mainly the distribution reflects the exposure to the virus rather than susceptibility itself, as far as we know. This is a very early paper that shows the early pattern of the initial stage. There was index case who contracted the disease from Saudi Arabia, but he was asymptomatic while he was passing the immigration, and then he developed symptom. So here's when May 3rd is when the index case returned from the Middle East, and then developed symptom from after a week, and then he was diagnosed much later, actually on 20th of May, after he spread to several people within the hospital, the first hospital he was admitted. And these were the initial peak among the hospital inpatients where the index case was hospitalized, and they were already under treatment for something else within the same hospital. And then the next wave, this is secondary cases, and the tertiary cases start to occur. But another very unfortunate event here was that because of after the first case was diagnosed as MERS at this 20th and 21st, the hospital staffs had to, a lot of the staffs had to be isolated, actually quarantined, because they were heavily exposed to the case. So they had to be quarantined, and there was not sufficient remaining staff in the hospital. So the hospital had to be closed. So this is the date when the hospital closed. So the rest of the patients, inpatients, were had to find another place to continue treatment. So they spread out in different hospitals, and then later they were found to have become ill. So these tertiary cases um, were those who are not already in the first hospital. They were in somewhere else, and then they again spread to other people where they were under treatment in after the first hospital was closed. So overall, up to the end of the epidemic, this is the whole timeline, and initial peak in the first hospital and the secondary cases in the first hospital, but with the same fashion, the people were s- who were in other places, other hospitals, uh, spread to many people in various different hospitals. So that was the huge peak um, that came from as a result of the tertiary cases from the first um, index cases, secondary cases, and then those people who were who contacted them in somewhere else. So it looks like initial cluster was amplified in the first hospital, and then they spread out to different hospitals across the hospital network. So this is important to it is important to recognize there is an existing hospital network across which people move around when they have to be referred. So throughout that network, the cases spread, and then there were secondary amplification. Actually, they are in terms of cases, they are tertiary or quaternary cases, but in terms of amplification, it's in the next hospitals. And then after that huge peak, then the government and hospitals began to realize how to deal with this epidemic, and then they have done their best, and then finally the clusters became smaller and smaller until it was under complete stop. So it was a series of spread, amplification, spread, and another amplification until it became under control. So this is another view of the network point of view. So the characteristics, the main characteristics among other things, was that it spread, the epidemic spread across hospital networks. That means the response or preparedness for any future possibility should be based on the network perspective, the connections, how the hospitals are connected, and how they are spread between and within hospitals. And a second aspect is that cluster sizes vary a lot by hospitals, from just a single case without any further spread to almost 90 additional patients in one hospital. So what determines this cluster size, and how can we improve our environment or our situation to tackle very soon, immediately, against this kind of epidemic, should come from the analysis of these varying cluster sizes and roughly. Of course, there are some aspect of number of visitors. Large hospitals with larger number of visitors have more possibility to have spread, but more important has been how crowded the hospital was, without much consideration of this possibility of emergent new epidemic. And also it's important how the hospitals dealt with the epidemic initially. Some was very aggressive, active from the first stage. Some others were tardy. They ignored the risk, and they responded late to make make things worse. And also, very important aspect was that uh, baseline capability for routine hospital infection control, how well they can do at baseline, the how much they are trained, how much they know about hospital infection control procedures, and those vulnerabilities seem to have amplified in some of the hospitals. So um, briefly, the logic of the measure, or the logic of the changes were initial. At the initial stage, the quarantine was administered after the patients were diagnosed, and that was late. Uh, after even they had been a week or so delay for initial several many patients, so they already contacted so many people uh, that escaped the surveillance. But later, the government and the response team strengthened the surveillance and contact tracing system, and then they started to quarantine people uh, at the time of the symptom onset. At least they removed the delay, and then later the government response managed to bring the level of quarantine more stricter. So uh, a lot of the contacts were identified before the case. The patient who uh, would spread, even develop symptoms. Actually, without symptom, within the incubation period, there is not much risk of spread. But as the response brings the measure well above this level, then the epidemic started to go down. So, with that experience, uh, there have been evolving support from IT, especially for contact tracing. Um, there were heavy usage of CCTV and EMR, electronic medical record, to identify who contacted the patients, the infected patients within the hospital. Uh, but unfortunately, a lot of this tracing was after the facts, after they already uh, made that contact. And also, between hospital tracing was very difficult initially, but finally, health insurance review agency has a system called DUR, drug utilization review system, mainly to identify prescriptions in different healthcare institutions, so that they detect any overdosage, or any poor multiple prescriptions that might actually create any drug interaction. So this system was first utilized for contact tracing for infectious disease, and this has been very effective, and contributed a lot to improve the contact tracing system. And then for community tracing, mobile phone tracking and credit card usage tracking was heavily utilized, but they needed patient consent. So these has been some evolution, some improvement throughout this epidemic. And then this is the data that the researchers, or the contact tracing personnels used heavily. So in each individual, this person with wearing a mask, this was a case, a patient, and this a patient lying down on this patient does not use a mask, although this patient is wearing a mask. These differences could be identified, and all these possible contacts were traced, so that they can be quarantined or isolated, or identified before they develop. So initial delay has made all the big waves and then there were very painful experiences and regrets over the delays. Especially, there were a very difficulty to assess the validity of patients' self-report on their histories because of their memory problems or their intentional hiding. So some initial loss of these contact histories created a huge issue. So it's a painful experience that we should not really completely rely on the self-report. We have to have a very valid and rapid tool for information collection without relying completely on patients' memories. So, in summary, there, although there have been some development in utilizing this information technology, there are so much more to be done in information connectivity and comprehensiveness, because we could not identify many of the moving lines because of the lack of those information, because not all the locations CCTV were installed. And also personnel and laboratory development and hospital infection control need to be drastically enhanced in many aspects from our experience. And then there was always governance issues. So I think that's it, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Professor Cho. Does anybody have a question or opinion on first speaker? Okay, we have an opportunity to next speakers. Okay, thank you, Professor Cho. So let's move to next speaker. Next speaker is Dr. David Waterley from UK. Now he is visiting Bangkok, Thailand, to join the Thai SIM conference and sharing his precious time with us. Thank you for your time, Dr. Waterley. He is the founder and the CEO of Gates, visionary consultancy on the strategic use of gamification and enabling technologies such as a serious game, Internet of Things, wearable sensor device, big data, virtual world, and social network. Throughout his career in converging and emerging technologies, David has been a pioneer and a thought leader in the application of these technologies for the development of business and the society. He was appointed as the founding director of the Serious Game Institute at Coventry University in UK, and he successfully established the Serious Game Institute as a global brand and a thought leader within 4 years. Throughout his career, he has been an innovative early adopter and the user of disruptive technologies. Dr. David Waterley, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. I apologize for the echo in my voice. I'm actually at the conference location, and I found a spare lecture room which has a bit of an echo, so I do apologize to that. I really enjoyed the previous presentation, and I hope that I can put a different perspective on how technology can be used to tackle things like pandemics and epidemics. So the title of my presentation is Serious Games, Simulations and Gamification Solutions and Trends for Viruses and Epidemics. I'm going to structure my presentation with a little bit of background to the concept of the use of serious games and simulations.
Dr. Waterley, we cannot see your slide. Please sharing your slide. First of all, Professor Joe, please stop sharing your slide, and then David Waterley, you can share your slide. Actually, at this time, we cannot see the whole slide.
Okay. Well, I need to. I will stop sharing my slides. So I have stopped sharing my slides.
뭐야, 왜?
Is there someone else sharing their slides?
Yeah, you please sharing. I should speak in Korean, please. Just a moment. 홍혜인 교수님 그 마이크폰을 꺼야 되는데 그 마이크폰을 꺼주세요.
끄겠습니다.
예. Okay. Okay, please go ahead, David Waterly. So we cannot see your slide. Please start your slide sharing.
I start my slide sharing now. So I go back to the first slide of my presentation.
Your first slide is just a black screen. So please make a next slide. Why don't you try next slide? Next slide number 2. What happens?
This is a presentation structure.
Structures. No, still we cannot see your slide. So
due to the network.
I think that okay, due to network speed, so we need to wait.
It takes around 5 to 10 seconds delay. It takes longer than. No, it's more than that.
Dr. Waterly, why don't you try next slide 2 and move in or move out on your slide?
I'm moving my slides.
Is there any possible?
I have.
Can we upload here? Because the network speed problem. So if we can upload our slide from this way.
If you have a copy of my presentation, so you can.
Yeah, we got your slide already, and we tried.
Do you want me to stop sharing my slides now then?
Yeah, still we cannot. We just can your slide just the screen, but the whole your slide cannot download it at this time. So maybe we can not.
If I stop sharing my slides.
Okay, so.
And you can load my slide presentation, and I will tell you to move on to the next slide. You want to try that?
Okay, sorry, can you stop the presentation slideshow first? See the presentation slideshow and start it again?
Stop the presentation slideshow, yeah?
Uh-huh. And start it again, and then go back to video desktop to start sharing it.
Okay, well, I'm starting the... wait a minute, I'll go back to my screen. I'm not sharing my slide at the moment, so I'm going to start my slideshow, and then I will start sharing. Okay, I've started sharing my slideshow now.
Sorry, I think there's something wrong.
I can see my opening slide.
You can see your opening slide.
Yeah. Can you see that slide?
Actually, we're seeing black screen right here.
Okay. Well, let me try. If you bear with me for a second, I will log off and log back on again. Okay.
Okay.
Very quickly.
I think that there are many factors for presentation problems, network and skill, how to manipulate, how to play the video software, and so first to log off and log on is a very classic. At this time, yeah, we don't know why this happened, so just log off and log on again.
Okay, I'm back on again now. So I'm going to try to share my slide presentation now.
Still, we can see your mouse pointer, but the screen, we can see your mouse pointer, but oh, okay. Okay, thank you. That's okay. So please go ahead.
You can see my slide.
Yeah, we can see the slide. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I want to talk about serious game simulation and gamification solutions and trends for viruses and epidemics. The structure of my presentation begins with a little bit of a background to the concept of using games and simulations to tackle pandemics. Then I want to talk about one or two examples around tackling pandemics, the use of games for tackling pandemics. Then a little bit about serious games and simulation solutions in general, before moving on to looking a little bit at the future, what's happening with technology in society and the implications for epidemics and pandemics. So the first point to make is that the idea of using games and simulations and play in connection with pandemics is far from new. And the example that I show on the screen now are some images from a children's nursery rhyme called Ring of Roses. And even when I was a child, we used to play this game. We'd sing Ring of Roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. And the origins of that come from the Black Death. And although I'm sure the game wasn't specifically designed for that purpose, but it has the effect of raising people's awareness of a problem, a pandemic problem, and also of the solution of the day. And the solution of the day for Black Death was, believe it or not, having a pocket full of flowers, posies of flowers. So this is an early example of the use of games to spread awareness, and by spreading awareness, hopefully, to introduce some behavioral change. So the role of games in simulations in general, serious games anyway, is to raise awareness of problems and situations, to change attitudes and behaviors. In the case of epidemics and pandemics, one of its uses is to improve early detection rates by training people to look out for specific signs, to give people a chance to play roles, and so train themselves for a situation which hopefully may never arise in their lifetime. In doing so, you can develop strategies and skills to deal with these situations, and also test people's abilities and competencies. So looking at role-playing games in general, role-playing games are amongst the most successful kinds of games in the world. If you look at games like Football Manager, that's a franchise game, a video game that gives people the opportunity to play the role of a football manager. It's something that very few people get the opportunity to do in their lives, but everybody thinks that they can be a better manager than the manager of their own team. And this is an example of a video game that gives them the chance to test that out. The Football Manager franchise has sold over 7 million copies around the world. But an example which is closer to the pandemic situation is a serious game called Flood Sim, which was a web-based game, and it was funded partly by the UK government and partly by an insurance company. And the idea behind Flood Sim, rather like the pandemic situation, is to try and alleviate the problems of flooding. And the route that Flood Sim chooses is to give people the chance to play the role of the flood czar. So you are the person in the UK in this game who makes the decisions about where to spend money on flood prevention. And you can spend money on very big landmark schemes like the Thames Barrier for flood prevention, or you can spend it on smaller schemes like providing sandbags for preventing river overflow. So in this game, people have a chance to see how good they are at preventing floods in the UK. And it was a very successful game, and even though there was very little in the way of advertising, there were 100,000 people played the game, downloaded that game within the first 6 weeks of its announcement. And so the parallel with pandemics and epidemics is that it raises the awareness of the general public about a problem situation and gives them a better understanding, and also maybe influence their behavior so that the impact of floods is less severe. So moving on to pandemics, it isn't necessary to use technology to play games that are based on tackling things like epidemics. And the pandemic board game is a very successful and classic multiplayer board game which has excellent game mechanics. So it simulates the spread of an epidemic, and it introduces the kinds of chances and factors that you find in real life. So in playing this game, you adopt different roles of being the strategist or being the medical profession, and the idea is you have to stop the epidemic spreading, and you have to respond to various incidences, pretty much like the previous speaker spoke of, with the different stages of the MERS epidemic within Korea. Another example is a very similar game called the Great Flu, which I guess in terms of its symptoms and its morbidity rates is not far off the MERS game. So the Great Flu is a game where you have the opportunity to make decisions that prevent people being badly affected, people in countries and economies being badly affected by a pandemic situation. And these are two video games. You can download the game Pandemic. It's available on Android mobile devices and also on iOS devices, and there is a small charge for downloading the game, but for organizations and governments may be wanting to prepare themselves better in the future for such an incident, having people play the pandemic game gives people a better understanding of how to respond to a suddenly emerging situation. Another example of a game or a simulation designed to train people to better respond to situations is a game developed in the UK by a traditional video games company called Blitz Games. They have a serious games arm called TrueSim, and they developed a game called Patient Rescue. And what this game does is it randomly generates very realistic looking patients. So you should be able to see on the screen some examples of patients with different ethnicities and different ages, different appearances. And so what this game does is creates a random patient and puts symptoms on that patient at random. So the game was originally designed to improve the success rates within accident and emergency in the northwest region of England, because what people were finding was that because there was a very high percentage of newly qualified medical practitioners in the hospitals in the northwest, when people came into accident and emergency, there was at least a 10% chance that after they had been treated in the A&E department of the hospital, their symptoms were actually worse than they were when they came in, simply because the doctors were not prepared enough and didn't have enough knowledge and experience to properly deal with these. So the Patient Rescue game is a simulation which gives people an opportunity, medical practitioners just trained, an opportunity to be able to detect and respond to the situations they're going to find themselves in A&E. And a similar approach could be applied to MERS. If you able to generate a random patient with MERS type symptoms, it could help to prepare medical practitioners. So looking at where we are at now, I travel quite a lot around the world, and I've been scanned many times for MERS. And recently, when I came here to Thailand, my journey took me from Birmingham in the West Midlands, which has a very high population, ethnic population of people from the Middle East, which is probably why it's the hub for the Emirates airline. So to get to where I am now, I flew from Birmingham to Dubai. I had a 2-hour layover in Dubai before catching an Airbus A380 to Singapore. In Singapore, I had to go through customs and come back in again to catch an Air Asia flight to Bangkok. So you can see that with the increased opportunities for travel that people have these days, there's enormously increased risks in spreading pandemic symptoms. And so I went through the type of scanner device that you see on the screen now, and they're getting increasingly sophisticated. And these devices can only be properly and effectively used if they are linked to artificial intelligence through cloud computing and data visualization to be able to accurately detect when someone has a condition and be able to respond to that. In the future, we are likely to see increasingly the use of wearable devices. I use a wearable fitness device to measure my physical activity and my sleep. But we're not far off the day when people will have sensors embedded in their bodies. And when that happens, and those sensors are able to measure things like body temperature, pulse rate, etc., we will have a far greater capacity for early detection. And so the data that is collected from these devices can go into simulations and into serious games to help not only with personal health management, so people do not put themselves and put other people unnecessarily at risk, but also supporting the medical practitioners with good analytic data. For those of you who are not familiar with the term gamification, it's become increasingly popular over the recent 2 or 3 years, and unfortunately most people who are involved in gamification, I don't think they really understand what it is. But gamification is really it's a universal practice that all human beings engage in, and it's used to influence behavior and influence outcomes. And you can use combination of the elements that you see on the screen there these are called games mechanics, in order to be able to influence outcomes in everyday life. So if, for example, if you were talking about MERS and you were wanting to engage people in a better understanding of how to tackle MERS either as a citizen or as a medical practitioner, gamification would suggest that one of the ways of engaging people is to introduce scenarios or narratives that give people a picture that brings them into the situation. And then you set people challenges, they have to respond to those challenges under a set of rules, etc. Chance and uncertainty play a big part, and as you've seen in Korea, a lot of the things that happen are almost unpredictable because of the chance and uncertainty involved in today's society and communications. In the case of pandemics, I've highlighted typically the kinds of elements that would be used in developing a game or a simulation to tackle pandemics. And how effective these elements are also depends on the environment in which they're used. And so I have these lists of influencers which also affect the effectiveness of the serious game. So the effectiveness of a serious game depends on ability, for example. So if a medical practitioner is well experienced, he's deal with flu-like symptoms before, he starts with a high level of ability, he's going to be have a great level of output. But if you start at a low level of ability, then that is going to have a reduced impact on the effectiveness of the game. So in the case of pandemics, I've highlighted what I think are the main influences in the effectiveness of any serious game or simulation based around pandemics. One of the most important new developments in technology, which is already being used, for example, in Ebola, is the use of crowdsourcing. And crowdsourcing is about engaging citizens in helping to provide information which is going to be useful to decision makers and strategists. And this particular platform, called the Ushahidi platform, has been used successfully in Liberia to engage the general population in contributing to the knowledge base. Now, there clearly are problems with the impact of technology. On the one hand, we have technologies like the ones that we're using today, which are extremely powerful in sharing knowledge and information. But on the other hand, with social networks and crowdsourcing, you also introduce the risks of untrained people misdetecting symptoms and causing panic and having a negative effect. So games and simulations not only provide some very positive ways, but the use of technology, social media and crowdsourcing, data visualization, analytics, etc., all of this has to be taken in context so that you understand that there are risks and uncertainties involved in these kinds of practices, but used in the correct way, they have proved to be very successful in tackling all kinds of global problems. So in the future, what I see is that through wearable technologies, particularly embedded devices for measuring body temperature, heart rate, etc., which people will adopt in or already adopting in large volumes for their own personal fitness and health management. This kind of real-time data combined with data visualization and crowdsourcing, what it's likely to lead is the blurring between virtuality and reality, and the incorporation of games mechanics into the use of real-world data. So when you're tackling MERS or any other outbreak, you're actually effectively playing a game, but it's a real-life game, and you're able to see the impact of your decisions fairly quickly. So simulation and role-playing games will not only be used to train people, but in future they are going to be increasingly used in recruiting staff, assessing their capabilities and competencies and training them. So when people go through their career, their daily activities will be effectively embedded in a game-like environment, so that people are continually assessed and trained, and that helps to make sure that the most competent and most able people have the right kind of jobs and level in the organization to be able to deal with these situations. So To conclude very quickly, and thank you very much for your time this morning, games mechanics and psychology are not just for medical professionals. They also engage non-professionals and ordinary citizens. This is very important if you're dealing with something like MERS, because you want to change citizen behaviour, raise their awareness, and to make sure that they indulge in personal health management and practices which help to spread awareness and stop the impact of some of these global issues. The disruptive technologies that I've spoken about, they provide new opportunities to be able to very early detect pandemics and to make interventions. And finally, the use of sensors and wearable technologies and crowdsourcing activities really point to a future in which we have a multi-sector, multidisciplinary approach to all global issues in society. So it's not just the medical profession who has to deal with things, it's also citizens. So that concludes my presentation. I thank you very much for your time. So I'm now going to stop sharing my... I stopped sharing already.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Wadley, for your presentation. So, does any question or comment on here or remote area? If you have some questions, okay. Here, Professor La.
Dr. Watley, I'm Hyung-Chul Ra from Korea. Thank you for your presentation. So I'm wondering if there is any commercial game available to control epidemic, so in like any CDC or any kind of the government organization that control the epidemics. Do they use any kind of commercial games to prevent that spreading of any epidemics?
At the moment, I think the game Pandemic is the one that CDC are associated with. I'm not quite sure how, but the Pandemic game is available for both the iPad and Android devices, and it's an excellent game for medical practitioners to develop their skills in dealing with different kinds of pandemics like MERS. So for a government organization, one of the things you could seriously consider is recommending that particularly the ones who are developing the senior decision makers, maybe managers of hospitals, that they try and play this pandemic game so that they are aware of the variables and they're aware of the strategies to adopt. Maybe if doctors in the hospitals in Korea had played Pandemic, you might have had a greater level of preparedness within the hospitals, because you mentioned in the previous presentation that there was quite a lot of difference between the way in which different hospitals responded to the situation. Some treated it very swiftly and decisively, and others didn't. And obviously they had different consequences and outcomes. And I think what will happen with games like Pandemic is that they will become, if you like, real-life case studies. They will be modelled on real-world incidences of pandemics like MERS in the future. So, yeah, the answer to your question is yes, it's already available. You could try Pandemic, or the other one, which is also available, I think, on Android and iOS, is the Great Flu.
Okay, thank you, Watley. Or is there any questions? Okay, here in venue side, please come forward here. Okay, we have microphone, wireless. Please go ahead. Would you zoom in the camera?
Thank you very much,
Very good.
Professor Wortley, for your presentation. I have just a question, maybe a little bit funny. I had read somewhere, maybe a book by David Pink, who says that now the world is moving towards the activities which are more, controlled by the right brain than the left brain. And when you are talking about gamification and its utility in doing more serious and useful things, I really find that, while we have to move from the very rigid textbooks to something which everybody will really enjoy. Probably many people are now moving from agriculture to other things, tougher subjects to more, easy things. Do you think that if we can make all the so-called serious things or dry or hard things into games, or we gamify our life, will the life be more efficient and more pleasant? Thank you.
Well, that's a very interesting question because I'm here in Bangkok, and I'm talking about something very similar within the education context. And I think you're absolutely right. When you talk about the different sides of the brain, left and the right side, one side, if you might call, is the side of logic and the side of science, which says for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And that side of the brain is very much about being able to predict what an outcome is. So when you make a decision, you can be fairly sure of the outcome of that decision. Whereas the other side of the brain, which is the creative side, is spontaneous and innovative, and it's not based on logic. And if you're going to influence people today, the world that we live in today is very different to the world that I grew up in. The world that I grew up in was pretty much a science-based world in which we expected that the world and life operated under certain rules, and that if we obeyed those rules, that we would progress in life and have a successful outcome. Today, it's very different, and to be successful, to be able to influence people and to change behavior, you need creativity and innovation. And I think the real challenge, particularly in pandemics, is to be able to blend this mixture of the right and the left brain. We cannot dispose of science and fact and cause and effect, because they apply in the world, but we have to find some way of it's almost like yin and yang. These two things are very complementary, and at the moment the world is very much rapidly changing and unpredictable, and we need to find a way of combining the best of data analytics, data visualization, the scientific aspects, and the creative, innovative aspect, because both sides of the brain are absolutely essential when you're dealing with something like a pandemic.
Okay, so Dr. Waterly, thank you for your presentation. So we move next speakers. Due to the time limitation, summarized speaker presentation would be more than welcome. On the next speaker, Ji-young An.
Sorry, sorry, I have to say goodbye. Kamsahamnida. Thank you very much for my time, and I will go and join the conference now.
Okay, thank you.
And nice to see Ji-young An as well.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, okay. Next speaker would be Ji-young An. Ji-young An received her PhD degree in Research and Theory Development in Nursing and Healthcare Informatics from New York. And also her interest is consumers' online health information seeking behaviors. So she is going to talk about the model explaining and the predicting information and the communication technology acceptance by healthcare consumers. Professor Am, please go ahead. Would you summarize it within 10 minutes?
Sure, I can do it.
Okay.
Can you hear me? And first of all, I would like to say hi to David Wortley and Professor Joe and Professor Lee in Malaysia. We are here from South Korea, and we all, are here to attend this conference. Actually, we are very honored to introduce our institute and have some kind of, the opportunity to work with you regarding serious games. So my presentation is kind of, the kind of appendix to David Waterley's presentation because we are going to talk about serious games. So first of all, I would like to introduce our institute because, I guess some of you are wondering if why Design Institute are here because, it's our for, health informatics kind of. So our institute has pursued a human-centered and user-friendly good design on the basis of scientific evidences. Since 2002, this institute has been selected for the first time in Korea as the One Center for Research Excellence under the category of art and sports. This is the first time in Korea. I would like to highlight these things, which has been financially supported by the National Research Foundation of Korea. Our institute has 4 majors. As you see, those are works done by our students in healthcare design. The first one is interior design, the second one is visual design, and the third one is product design, and the last one is film animation design. So with this kind of competency in design area, and also, Inje University has run and manages 5 university level hospitals in Seoul, Ilsan, Busan. And with this kind of infrastructure and kind of potential asset, we could work in healthcare design. I'm not so sure how much of you are familiar with this kind of term, healthcare design or healthcare service design, but these days, this is a really hot issue in healthcare. So Design Institute of Inje University are working on this topic. Those are done by our faculty members and students majoring in healthcare design. Our institute is not only for the making or designing some physical aspects, but also to study research in integrated design research. This journal is official journal of the Design Institute of Inje University, which was launched in January 2002. This journal has been included in the list accredited by the NRF of Korea since 2010. It is really honorable indeed. The aim of this journal to promote the fundamental understanding of interdisciplinary design research. It means that not only we are working on design itself, but also we are doing on interdisciplinary research, including healthcare as well. With this kind of competencies and infrastructures and manpowers and everything, this is our current picture of what we are doing currently. Design is playing a pivotal role in our research on healthcare design. We are working together with people in public health, health informatics, nursing, humanities, biomedical engineering, medical sciences, and also sports science. So we are working with people relevant fields. So we are currently doing for interdisciplinary research. Today, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the scholarly stuff because other members or presenters are talk about their practical things, just like David Waterley spoke. But our institute is academic standing institute, so we are focusing on those pieces a little bit. Previous studies says that design improves healthcare outcomes. This is our motto of this our institute. Actually, the importance of healthcare design is continuously highlighted in the literature conducted in the previous research. The design decision have the potential to affect patient outcomes, quality of work life of care providers, and organizational performance. And previous research also talked about healthcare design is increasingly guided by rigorous research linking the physical environment of hospitals to patients and staff outcomes, and also is moving toward evidence-based design. So these times, I can safely say that we are in the era of, speaking the need of convergence research. You can see these diagrams, and I want to talk about the intersection of the diagrams. And our institute have placed a couple things in that areas. For example, various channels, media of communication, consumer satisfactions, information and communication technology acceptance, user experience, healthcare service design, and so forth. Those are topics can be placed in the intersection of the diagrams. And we are currently doing convergence research currently conducted in the Institute of India University. Actually, we are in the second stage of the research, conducting database original research. Because, for the past 3 years, we had been doing some research on fundamental stuff. And now we are in the second stage of the research funded by the NRF, and we are dealing with some data. It's called data itself. You know what? Dr. Lee asked us to present some kind of case study as well as an introduction of our Institute of India University. This is the very recent issue. I introduced this book. You see this one? This book is, David Waterley is one of the co-editors of this book. And then I met with him in London, and I got this book, and I, read this book, and is really happy because it's about serious games and learning environment. And one of the chapters are dealing with some kind of technology acceptance pieces. It's exactly suit one of our research topics. So I was really excited when I got this book. And I featured this book to our healthcare informatics research for book review section. So this is one of the, our collaboration with David Waterley in the UK. One of our research questions conducted here now. So we are questioning about, is there a theoretical foundation to better explain and predict individuals' acceptance of information and communication technology? In other words, what factors are associated with consumers' acceptance and usage behavior of health information and communication technology? This is our research questions. All right. So our institute has studied on TAM. It's a kind of theoretical model. Yes, technology acceptance model. I thought and I assume some of you are very familiar with this model because it was developed in 1989, and since then many researchers in information systems and in healthcare informatics sciences utilize this model for their research. But this term also has a limitation, and many researchers and many literature suggest that researchers has to expand this model, adding some kind of external variables to better prediction. So this is why our institute has conducted some research on this stuff. Previous research commented that we have two things for further research based on many meta-analysis studies. As you see, there are so many meta-analysis studies. 99 studies, 88 studies, 121 studies, and 63 studies, all are meta-analysis conducted in the literature. The literature we reviewed suggests that researchers have to emphasize impact of information technology design characteristics. They commented on design characteristics when we are trying to conduct research in this area, including serious games or healthcare informatics or whatever. And the next one is neural information systems. It's quite new things, and honestly, I'm not so sure about this piece. but I'm trying to explore some things, within this area. This is the whole picture our institute are trying to, the study and try to explain more in detail. Actually, based on technology acceptance model here, no, previous one, okay. Based on TAM, technology acceptance model, TAM2 was proposed, but TAM2 did not quite suit to the fitness of the model. So our institute developed information and communication technology acceptance model. And we tested this model, and the results was quite successful. Only two paths, a path from perceived ease of use to behavioral intention to use, and another path from website usage to website loyalty. Only those two paths are proved not to be significant, but all other passes show that are significant. So this is what we are doing currently, and then I would like to know. I would like to introduce to you what we are doing. But you know what? As I previously told you that. Okay. As I told you that the other one is another piece is about neuro information system stuff. And then, I feel that I quite, sure that we have to learn about more things about, the neuro information systems. So the reason is that this is the whole picture of the what I was doing in the UK with David Watley. And we went to Coventry University Serious Games Institute, and actually, he set up this institute. And currently, the center, the director is Pam Cato. And then her articles, I cited her articles in my book review for introducing some kind of serious games and stuff. And Coventry University, one of their research institutes, Serious Games Institute, is quite well settled down there in the UK, and their website here.
Professor An, would you summarize more? Would you summarize? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure. And the next one is I use information systems stuff, and then okay. These are another one is that I went to their KAIST because I want to talk to the founders or researchers. And KAIST, there are so many researchers there, and it's David Watley, and he is the another founder, Mindplay, and we are talking about all the neuroscience and information system stuff in the UK. So with this kind of the infrastructure and resources, everything, we'd like to work more on the serious games and with the fundamental theoretical frameworks for future research. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor An. So we are behind the schedule, so we will move next speaker without any question and comment. Thank you, Professor An, for your good presentation. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Professor. Next speaker would be Dr. Jung-Hoon Moon. Dr. Jung-Hoon Moon is a senior researcher of Korea Institute of Science and Technology Information, which is a national supercomputing and advanced research network center in Korea. He is going to talk about the collaborative platform service for high-performance scientific applications based on compute, storage, networks, resources, and also third-part applications such as weather, climate, physics, medical, bio, astronomy, earth science, scalable visualization, and the virtual reality, and the ultra-resolution video, and so on. Dr. Jung-Hoon Moon, please go ahead. Please turn on your microphone.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yes, please go ahead.
What about my slides?
Please slide show, so we just see edit mode of your slide.
Okay, wait a minute.
Would you explain how to start the slideshow?
Dr. Moon, do you want me to explain the how to share?
Wait a minute. Almost finished.
Okay. But it's still
Oh,
it's still editing mode. So what about this? Just maximize your window and just a PowerPoint and just maybe you can just reduce the manuscript part because I think we are a little bit behind the schedule right now. Yeah, it works now. Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
yeah. Okay. My name is Jung-Hon Moo from Kisti. Jung-Hon Moo Kisti, the Richie. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Yes. Hello, my name is Jung-Hon Moo from Kisti, which is the Korean Institute of Science and Technology Information. I'm working for advanced networking technology for especially remote collaboration of scientific applications. Today, I want to talk about the collaboration on the high speed and high performance networking as a title, Collaborative Platform for Medical Healthcare by CREONET. CREONET means that the Korea Research and Educational Oriented Network. And this presentation consists of three parts. The first, introduction, why we need a high-performance collaborative the platform. That is a global trend, which is a changing world environment toward a more faster and more bigger and bigger data and a more collaborative environment. Network speed, faster and faster, data size is bigger and bigger. So many scientists want more remote collaborations. So usually experts from the community not stay same place and spread out all over the world. It is very hard collaboration at the same time and the same place. The reason why we need a collaborative platform. Second, I explained several collaborative platforms and announced each technologies. Finally, I will show a showcase using a collaborative platform as a solution of remote collaboration. The first about the global network trend. I will show the two major global network community. The one is the US Ignite and the other is the Internet 2. We can find how progress global trend according to network technologies. And the first one is the US Ignite. The US Ignite is the fosters the creation of the next generation internet applications that provide transformative public benefit since 2012. These applications are focused in the 6 area of national priority. The sixth is the national priorities: the education and the workforce, and the energy and health, and the public safety, and the transportation, and advanced manufacturing. This project over the next 5 years, the ecosystem created by US Ignite will deliver 60 next generation applications and 20 community test beds where applications can be researched, developed, tested, and refined and deployed. A new forum for collaboration between an array of diverse partners. The basic design is connection, 1 gigabps between major cities, which is based on SDN. The SDN meaning is a software-defined network technology. It means that the US continental itself, it can be huge test bed or experimental facility. And the SDN is that can be easily changed topology by user or applications. This symbol is picture is show us the simple and core image of US Ignite. It consists of public and private partners. Core value is, as I mentioned, create next generation application. Consists of partners are community and industry and government and the foundations and the R&E institute or universities and the Gini. Gini is a future internet community in US is more detailed explained is skip. Every special groups are cooperation with one another to create their aim. The second one is Internet tool. In charge of the next generation networking reading group in the world, they said that Science Gateway. The Science Gateway is meaning is helping communities lead the way. A Science Gateway is the community development set of tools, applications, and the data that is integrated via a portal or a suite of applications. Usually, the graphical user interface that is further customized to meet the needs of a specific community. For example, TeraGrid and Exceed. TeraGrid and Exceed is already established for Science Gateway law. As shown the picture of the global network topology world map, it's kind of world map. It's already connected each continental state high-speed optical network. Therefore, the remote collaboration is more close to us. And this slide shows of the state of art of the field, how the researchers use the tools and the distributed environment on the large scale. The state of art of the field is a data intensive and compute intensive problem. Sophisticated tools and method available. Distributed computing infrastructure available. The workflow systems available. Distributed data management available. High-speed network available. How do researchers use that field status? The solution is the very big the internet tool is shows the Science Gateway is a convenient access to data and the tools and the single point of entry for multiple organizations. No firewall issues. Diverse frameworks and APIs supported that field. Yes. Internet network topology in US show us that every major cities or major points are already connected to high-speed network. It is very helpful who use remote collaborations for high-performance applications such as physics, Earth observation, and medical, and bio, and astronomy. So far, I just explained about this the global networking trend. From now, I explained the collaborative platform from KIST development. This picture is a conceptual image of a collaborative platform. The name is Corinne. The 5 major circles are the core function of this platform. The red box is R&D facilities. It's kind of a hardware and software resources. And the yellow boxes are software functions. Those are consist of large data transfer, collaborations, and communications with humans. The final one is identify. And this platform is a single user interface with a high-speed network such as ClearNet and Gloria. These are network names. And the core support areas are advanced science, advanced engineering, high-level education, and industry. Everyone can join and enjoy this platform, single sign-on from web. The next slide is, and also, it can be extended for R&D facilities as a science DMZ concept. It's more complex. We are able to build or set up the several R&D facilities on major point, which is a domestic or international point. There is no problem. Every places are possible if high-speed networks are there. And then it can be connected to very high-speed networks such as 100 gigabps Ethernet. It means that we can create the very convenience area for R&D facility. Their name is Science D&D Zone. Science D&D consists of 100 gigabit Ethernet and software-defined network and the virtual circuit and the data transfer node and R&D facilities, and adapt appropriate security rules. At the last, every science D&D can be connected to one another via the federation technologies. At that time, collaborative platform is very huge. And next slide, I will show the core functions. This picture shows us the software-based functions and the hardware-based functions. The left side, the green box, contains several convenience tools with collaboration. It means that some of them are human collaboration or acceleration or storage or fast FTP or WebKLC and so on. And the right red box contains, as I mentioned, the R&D facilities. They are two major facilities which name is Real Lab and M Lab. Next slide explained about them more detail. The first, left side web capture picture is original, the main web page of CoRIN. It consists of several functions menu. Each one is right side, from the top. And the meeting, if someone is a meeting schedule, make a meeting schedule and using a footer function. And someone web-based file manager, seems like it's a Global Online using a DTN. And someone wanted to accelerate web downloading speed and the proxy server and using WebKLC. And the next one is very famous is a function, the sharing file of the 100 terabytes. The name is file send. This function is using via the email. Someone is the upload is up to the 100 terabyte file and upload and spread out via email. Someone want to make FTP transfer via web as using web FTP, and someone want to make a web-based seminar, video, a presentation, desktop document share is something like this video using a webinar. The webinar solution is the open source, very convenient and very easy to the compatibilities. The several types is video web seminar tools. And someone make a web-based video talk, include Android mobile and the simple video chat and the document share and using a web feed. And someone calls anybody online based on XMPP protocol is using a video course. The last one is experimental environment for the R&D and the data transfer. The name is R&D facilities. The next, this is the currently we changed this the web page, main page is changed the design, and the last week we just changed it. And if you access this web page, and you can find this picture. Okay, after next. Yes. Continuously, so I explained the basic operational concept and the collaboration and the communications tools of CoRIN so far. Now, I will introduce one of R&D facilities. That name is Real Lab. As I mentioned, we have two R&D facilities service. Actually, it means that the storage and the CPU cloud system. Someone wanted to the storage or the CPU resources wanted to that. Yes. He can join and this cloud system and receive some resources. This picture is the basic concept for Real Lab architecture. The Real Lab is a high-performance cloud platform for supporting collaborative research of Cryonet and Gloriad. The other words, Real Lab provide a virtual experiment environment for application researchers for especially need for CPU and storage memory. First step, user access virtual machine via web, the actually cloud platform based on OpenStack, and also in needs for membership. And the user can consist what they want from resource pool in Real Lab, such like a CPU, hard disk capacity, same things in storage, the memory, image, and so on. And also user can select the OS type, the currently Windows and the several Linux supported. It means that every resources can be allocated to user, so user can check all system resources status from the menu, and then require what he wants. Image means is that stored environment when you log out status right before. When you finish your job and save the image, and wait a minute. Save the image stores. And when you finish your job and save the image, and the next time you can call the image. It is very convenient that let's spend the time to make a research environment. And most of all, this image is shared with the collaborators. It's very easy. And it works on CareerNet and the Gloria, such like a high-speed network. The bottom, the blue box is the main features are following: the launch instance and access them, and the instance is allocated the basic account. And next then is create the volume and attach it to the instance. The volume is a hard disk, meaning that. Create the snapshot and the launch instance using it. When combine instance and the snapshot, it comes running state and then can save image. So far, explain the basic concept of real lab. The next slide shows specs of the virtual machines. The next slide is, as I said, the real lab provides the virtual experiment environment for application researchers. Current service resource and the future service resource.
Dr. Moon, Dr. Moon, would you skip the more technical aspect of your slide?
Okay.
So, yeah,
Okay,
because
okay.
we have no time.
I try. Yes. According to the chair, and this is using simple to capture image. And the other one is analysis, the CPU leasing system. It's kind of the analysis and the CPU leasing system. And skip the more detail, and seems like it's a real lab. And this slide is a human communication. It's well-known issues in everywhere. The next slide is introduced shortly. It's just a showcase. How can you use a webinar in Korean? It's almost seems like it's a video. I just skipped. And this is the finally topic is use case. I will introduce use case of a collaborative platform. Unfortunately, this case is weather and the climate group, not medical area. But I think that both of them are almost like workflow as a third part application areas. This picture is the main picture. This picture shows a model of our support. How can use collaboration infrastructure by Korea and Gloria. This is example of the KICT, the Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology. Research for flooding, urban flooding, and drought based on the weather data. Its workflow has a weather data create and transfer to researchers and analysis, and then archiving or store to result. And every remote expert have to collaborate with one another. This is a full scenario. First, the KICT need for weather data which has a specialty that particular locate and time, and the particular factors such like temperature, humidity, wind, rainfall from low observation data. Second, it works in Bugyong University in Busan. They have computing workflow and result sending to the analysis system. It is a real lab or MLab. Using Korean file standard as a sending tool. Next, the KICT researchers analyze the middle stage result data from Bugyong University. And then the final result of analyzed data storage. Finally, remote experts discuss or the collaboration with them via webinar or collaboration tools in Korean. In addition, this collaborative platform, Korean, support WMO, the World Meteorology Organization project under UN, building a cloud farm system based on Earth observation data and the support for global collaboration infrastructure that weather and climate data share with the developing or underdeveloped countries. This is, I showed the table it is work and the function matrix table. The first user need to manipulate or analysis. It means need a CPU. User can use a real lab or MLab. The second need to transfer. It means that network or storage. User can use a file sender or and so on. The third user need archiving. It means that need storage. User can use a DTN or a real lab. The final need to discuss. It means that human collaboration. User can further and the webinar and so on. And this is just the showcase workflow according to their job. Yeah, so far, I try and explain the collaborative platform for medical healthcare as ICT infrastructure. If this infrastructure and the technology need something for medical healthcare, please feel free to talk about that and let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moons. We are really expecting your support. Does anyone of you have questions on the whole session? So because we are behind the schedule. Okay, no question here. Okay, so I think it's time to finish the sessions. Thank you all the speakers and the engineers for your efforts to make this session successful. Now I will close healthcare session 2. See you all the next APA meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you. 문정 선생님 수고 많았습니다. 너무 앞부분에서 늘어지면서 좀 진행이 매끄러지는데 아이고 석 선생님도 계시네요. 예. So, yeah. Okay, you can move for luncheon time. So I'm sorry in the Korean just for brief discussion. 김홍도 선생님도 끼고 가셨네요. 마이크 켰어 이제. 저 에코가 너무 많이 들어온다. 그래요. 그러면 임재대 선생님도 아까 저 소장님도 계신 것 같은데.
네.
소장님, 아이고 소장님 안녕하세요. 예, 여기 학교는 지금 현장에는 한 20-30명 요쪽 분야 그룹선들 계신데요. 너무 점심시간이 좀 늦어가지고 지금 점심시간 30분이 지났으니까 그래서 할 수 없이 질문도 못하고 종합 디스커션도 못하고 했는데 예, 바로 세션 바꿔야 되니까 여기서 끊겠습니다. 예, 조선 선생님 고맙습니다. 요 다음 세션 준비 때문에 여기서 바로 끊어야 된답니다. 감사합니다. 예, 한국에서 뵙겠습니다. 예, 홍 교수도 수고 많았습니다.
지금 달 교수님하고 좀 세팅하는 게 있는데요. 이게 어떻게 하나? 식사부터 했어요?
네, 이거 하나씩 계속 이것을 하고.
이거 잠시만요. 이거 지금 어떻게 좀 저희 목소리가 잘 들리나 이쪽에?
교수님 저희 목소리 들리세요?
달 교수님 저희 목소리 들리시나요?
이현선 교수님.
네, 우리 목소리 잘 들리는데.
이방 2입니다. 방 1으로 오세요. 패션 1 방으로. 지금 방 2입니다. 방 끊깁니다.
예.